Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 12-game NBA slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys like and smash that subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. Also, check out YouTube memberships. If you get second tier, you get all my write-ups. I do put some of them free occasionally, but most of the time you're going to have to be in those tiers to get those write-ups. So make sure to check those out. Those write-ups will cover more information for what I put in the videos. So I also put more write-ups up than videos I make. In other words, I make videos for other sports and stuff that don't always, or I make write-ups for some sports I don't always make videos for. You also get my hockey picks and stuff like that in there as well with when it comes to the prop bets and things like that. So let's go ahead and get into the slate though. Also make sure to check out the Discord there in the description as well. We got a lot of cool people in there and it's real fun. So let's get our core plays first. We have Tyus Jones for Washington, Obi Toppin for Indianapolis, or sorry, for Indiana, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. for Memphis. Obviously, the all three of these guys have some really good situations, and so I do like them a lot. Let's go and get our point guards here. We're gonna start with Tyus Jones. Now he is nice and cheap here, and he's been at a pretty low price right now, where he was up and down throughout last season. But when he was starting for Memphis without John Morant, he had a lot of upside, and I look for him to continue that here in Washington. His price pretty fairly here, and I think he's going to be a really good opportunity to have a big season. I do expect his price to rise after the first week or so, so get him in here while you can. Looking at Halliburton for Indianapolis in 4 games this season. In 4 games last season versus Washington, he averaged 45 fantasy points a game. So he's got nice potential here. He's right in the price range that we want. And he also faces, obviously, Washington also somewhat of a weak defensive team, and he should be able to dominate them. The only real risk here is it getting out of hand early and him being limited a little bit. But I expect him to have a big game, and I do like his potential on this one. Then we're going to look at Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, he's a little bit underpriced here for Brooklyn. He's going to be the top option here for the team. He's had some monster games versus Cleveland last season. He tends to do well in tighter games. Cleveland is also very bad against his position, so that gives him a lot of upside here. And as you can see, he averaged 41 fantasy points against them, which is higher than his other averages. And he's priced nice and fairly today for that. Then we'll look at Alexander Walker. Now he's minimum price. Now he's high risk, high reward. He's kind of a boom or bust play, but it looks like he might have some opportunity to be a player that gets a quality amount of minutes for the Timberwolves. So he's kind of a contrarian value play, kind of a Hail Mary play as well. There is some rumor that he could draw some starts this season, but when that happens, that'll definitely give him a lot of usage. But even if he comes off the bench as the first guy off the bench for the guards, then he's going to have some utility. He does like to shoot the ball, and he does tend to be a spark plug and play good defense, so he definitely has some fantasy point potential. Looking at Luka Doncic for Dallas, he's going to be a high-risk play today as he is questionable, but if he does play, which it looks like he will do, then he will have all the opportunity to have a huge game here. He faces the Spurs. Now it's going to be him versus Wembyama. But Luka has had some monster games last year against the Spurs, and I expect him to continue to try to do that. And so I think he's a great play on the slate. Drew Holiday also in play for Boston. Now he's actually underpriced here. He was around. Whoopsie, sorry about that. You can see he stayed in the $7,000 to $8,000 range most of the season last year. I do think with the new role that there's some concern that he won't gel particularly well, but I think that he's going to have a lot of opportunity here. He's played with prolific scorers before anyway, and with oh my gosh, my brain. In Milwaukee, that's what I was trying to say. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to have a good game here, and he's just underpriced, quite frankly, and so that gives him a lot of potential here. Moving our shooting guards, Drew Holiday, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Spencer Dinwiddie also play this position, so you can utilize them there as well. I also like Zach LaVine for Chicago. Chicago actually just looks underpriced as a team. Also, without Ball, that's going to give their core three, which is LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic, a lot of upside here. He's played well throughout last season, and even though he does have a lower floor, he's got a good ceiling, and he's got a nice, matchup here against SGA, who is a good defensive player, but individually speaking, LaVine scored 40 and 43 fantasy points in the 2 meetings last season, so I expect him to have a really solid opportunity, and he's a little bit underpriced here. Another value play I like today is Talon Horton Tucker. Now, for Utah, he's played pretty solid last season. And when he draws starts, he tends to have good games. His price goes up and down. He's a little bit pricey today, but he's still viable, assuming he does draw the start here. And he's got good reason to improve this season. He's also in a good situation against Sacramento, with where defense really isn't their biggest strength, where they're more of an offensive team. He also scored 22 and 19 fantasy points against them last season, and so I look for him to have another solid opportunity here. Desmond Bain from Memphis is an interesting spot here. He's going to be a little bit overpriced today, I think, but he has got a lot of upside here. He should have a decent matchup for him as well against the Pelicans. And with no John Morant, he's going to have an increase in usage, and he's got a lot of opportunity. Then we'll look at Brandon Ingram for Pelicans. Now, he's high risk, high reward. The question here is how will he play with Zion back? Obviously, he got a big boost last season for a lot of the year without Zion playing. If Zion plays a full complement of minutes, that could hurt Ingram a little bit, but he does have some monster games against Memphis last season, though he definitely feels a little pricey, but he's definitely capable. Moving to small forward, Levine, Bain, and Ingram and Horton Tucker can all play this position. And then I have a couple other guys to consider that are worth considering. One being DeMar DeRozan for Chicago. Now he's actually pretty nicely priced at $7,100. He's actually a little underpriced. He was in the steady 8,000s most of last season, even reached 9,000 some parts of the year. He has a lot of potential, and he's usually a pretty consistent player. Obviously, he's getting older, but he definitely has a lot of upside, and I think he's going to be a good opportunity to have a big game, especially with the injury situation in Chicago. And then we're going to look at Jimmy Butler for Miami. Now, obviously, Emo Jimmy, the picture on FanDuel is actually funnier than the one here on DraftKings, but the Emo Jimmy is going to be having some opportunities to have a big game here. I actually like DeMar DeRozan a little bit safer just because he's priced a lot cheaper, but they both have a lot of upside, and Jimmy has a potential for a huge game. He averaged over 50 fantasy points a game against Detroit in his 2 games last season, so I do think he's capable. Maybe in the power forward, obviously Emo Jimmy and DeMar DeRozan can play at this position, and then we really like Jaren Jackson Jr., who can play power forward or center for Memphis. He's underpriced and has big role here. With guys already out, his role should be be big in this game, and he's got a ton of upside. I do like his potential here, and he's nice and safe and cheap, and that gives him a lot of utility. Evan Mobley for Cleveland also in play for Cleveland against Brooklyn. Now he's had some really sizable games last season against Brooklyn. He had 60 fantasy points in the last matchup. And he definitely draws some upside because of the injuries to other teammates and stuff like that, and so his role will be increased a little bit today. Not only that, but when he's going to be Jarrett Allen being out, gives him a lot of utility as a great option. Then we'll look at Obi Toppin here for the Pacers. Now, Obi is minimum price, and he is rumored to start today, so if he does draw the start and have a big role, he will definitely be a great option on this slate, and he could, catch 30 fantasy points or more. As you could look last season, he had some games where he started for the Knicks, and he scored in the 40s and 50 fantasy points, so I like him at this minimum price, and it's hard to avoid, quite frankly, and it helps you pay up at other positions. Kyle Kuzma also in play for Washington. He and Poole will get all the shots, and I look for him to have a big ceiling here, though his floor is also lower than you would like, but his price is okay right now, and he has a lot of upside. PJ Washington also in play for Charlotte. He has some nice utility here. He does have a low floor and a high ceiling, but he has good upside, and his price is pretty decent here, especially with guys being out early on in the season. You could also consider Julius Randle, Dini Avdija, and Wembyana and Chet Holmgren at this position, but those last two are going to be tough to potentially roster today. I forgot to mention at point guard, you could also consider LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, and Shea Alexander, and De'Aaron Fox. So moving into our centers here, obviously we can use Obi Toppin, Jaren Jackson, and Evan Mobley here. But one of my favorite plays at this position as well is Vucevic, who's underpriced here by quite a bit. He obviously not as underpriced as some of the other players, but he is still underpriced, as he was in the 7 to 8 to 9 range most of last season. He's got a lot of utility here, especially with the injury situations in Chicago. I look for him to have a lot of upside in this matchup against Oklahoma City, which really doesn't have too much that can stop him, though he will be going up against Chet Holmgren, I think that he probably will still dominate. Looking at Julius Randle, now he's got a tough matchup here for him against the Boston, but he had a really good game. Uh, he's had really good games against Boston the last 2 seasons where he's only had no game under 38 fantasy points. And he only needs 42 to pay off at this price point, and so he has a really good opportunity to have a big game and have nice upside and potential. And then Miles Turner, also in a good situation there, though he does have a low floor and a high ceiling. He's underpriced here, at least at the early part of the season. Well, he does need to stay healthy to really pay off throughout the season, but he's definitely capable of a good game here. Though his floor, like I said, is pretty low, but he has a high ceiling, and he's got a very plus matchup against Washington. So you could also consider Wembyana and uh, uh, Bam, sorry, and Sabonis. Uh, so I think that that's a good situation for this team. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.